This is Mr. MegaManFan. Like, share, comment, subscribe. You know all the things to do. Today I have a package from the Ukraine. That's right, all the way from Eastern Europe to the United States. And it took about 2 months to get here, but considering it's sold out everywhere else, it was well worth the trouble. And what did I get? Well, you'll see in a second once I remove the seal, but first, I have to say I was a little bit confused when I ordered directly from Crix because I was under the impression that he and his family had moved to Spain to avoid the current crisis in his homeland, but I guess his operations must have remained behind instead of coming with him because they're shipped out from the Ukraine and not Spain, and it took a long time to clear customs there and took a little while to clear customs here, but once it did, I have the EverDrive GGX7, the latest and best EverDrive for the Sega Game Gear, which can also play Sega Master System games on your Game Gear or Game Gear compatible device. But like all EverDrives, you have to go through a few steps to prepare it. It doesn't come preloaded with anything. It doesn't have an operating system or any games on it, so you got to do a little bit of the legwork yourself. You got to dump your own games or have backups of your games. Not going to tell you how to do that, but you can figure that out for yourself. The operating system, on the other hand, is publicly available on a couple of places. Crix website has it, StoneAgeGamer.com has it, and I'm sure there are other resources that have backups of the operating system as well. But you got to put it on a micro SD card, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, some flash or EverDrive devices tend to be a little picky about what kind of micro SD brand they work with, so I always keep several different ones on hand in several different sizes. And I decided to try the SanDisk 32 gigabyte micro SD because the file sizes for Game Gear and Master System games are pretty small. You're not going to need a lot of storage, and I was happy to learn that this one was compatible with the GGX7, so I can recommend SanDisk, but I'm pretty sure other brands like Samsung or ON will work as well. Oddly enough, the cheap Walmart brand that's ON with two N's seems to work in just about everything. But as mentioned, you are going to need an operating system, so I'm getting it from StoneAgeGamer.com. Make sure that you download the compatible operating system for your device because there's one for the original EverDrive Game Gear and then there's a different set for the X series. And you want to get the latest version that's been made, which is 1.04 as of the making of this video. It could have changed by the time you're watching it, which would only mean that Crix has added more features to it. So if there's something more recent than 1.04, grab that instead. After that, the process is relatively the same whether you're on a Mac or a PC. You need to put the micro SD card and an SD card adapter, put it in your computer somehow, whether you have a port for it or a USB hub, and then you need to reformat it as MS-DOS FAT32. Don't use macOS Journaled, don't use FAT16, use MS-DOS FAT32. That will guarantee 100% compatibility with the file structure that Crix uses on the EverDrive. Every EverDrive that I've ever owned has been FAT32. And some of the other devices that you might use like TerraOnion or PSIO or XStation, whatever, those might be supporting a wide variety of formatting. But as far as I can tell, FAT32 for EverDrives. It's just what you do. At this point, you want to unzip the operating system, put the SMS-sys in the root directory of your microSD card, and then create a separate folder called backup or ROMs or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter, it'll find it if you just give it any old label, and that's where you're going to put your games. Once you put the ROMs in that folder, it's all downhill from there. You eject the microSD, you put the microSD in your GGX7, and you put your GGX7 in the Game Gear compatible device. You can either use an original Sega Game Gear or something like the Analog Pocket, which I am doing here. It will initialize the SMS-sys and tell you that it's gone to a default state and press any key to continue. And once you do that and open your backup folder, all of your games will be there. And that's it. You're ready to go. You've got every Game Gear game you could possibly want to play on your EverDrive, whether it's through your original Game Gear or through a Pocket or through anything else that can play Game Gear games. If you really want to get wacky with it, you could put your EverDrive GGX7 into the Game Gear adapter that you can buy for analog Mega SG, and you could play your Sega Game Gear games through an adapter through the analog Mega SG, even though you could jailbreak your analog Mega SG and just play Game Gear games off an SD card in the slot. But if you want the games to be on an EverDrive that you can take out and put in a Game Gear, then maybe you'd do this instead. And obviously, the convenience factor here is the huge benefit of the GGX7, because let's say you have a library of 100 or so Game Gear games like I do. Wouldn't you rather have all of them on demand when you want to play them instead of having to get out a cartridge every time you want to switch games? It's hugely beneficial. And if you have something like a Pocket, the GGX7, I'd say it unlocks the potential of it, because to date this system hasn't been jailbroken, so you can't play any ROMs directly off a micro SD in the analog Pocket. But if you put micro SD with all your games in the EverDrive GGX7, that's your workaround. You can play what you want even though the analog Pocket hasn't been jailbroken. And the nice thing about this is you can play more than just Game Gear games. Allow me to demonstrate. I've created a second folder called Backup SMS, and I've put Sega Master System games in here. I'm going to play one of my all-time favorite SMS games. It's called The Ninja. And as you can see, because the Game Gear and the Sega Master System are so fundamentally the same, the Game Gear has a slightly different resolution, which means that if you try to play Game Gear games on a Sega Master System, you're going to get some overscan in a lot of cases, but other than that, they are virtually the same hardware. The Game Gear is just a scaled-down portable version of a Sega Master System, so is it any wonder that Sega Master System games work on a Game Gear or a Game Gear-compatible device? In fact, there are cartridge adapters that let you do what I'm talking about, play Sega Master System games on a Game Gear, so really this functionality being on an EverDrive GGX7 shouldn't come as any surprise. Although one of the extra features that might come as a surprise is that you can enable a hotkey for an in-game menu to use at any time. By default, it's set to up, 1 and 2 at the same time. Hit all 3 of those buttons, whichever ones are 1 and 2 for you, and you'll be able to access a menu where you can save a state, load a state, or go back to the main menu and select another game altogether. I will demonstrate that here by creating a save state after I beat the boss in the first stage of the Ninja. And then I'll be able to go to stage 2 and go back into the menu and load back to stage 1. Watch as I do it. Create the save state. Once I get the camera in focus here. Alright, I think we're good now. And now I can go on to stage 2. And I decide, oh whoops, I wasn't ready for that yet. I'll go back to my previous save state. And now I can play it whenever I'm ready to, on demand. There's only one save state per game so far as I can tell. Maybe in a future revision of the firmware, Crix might add the ability to select different save states, but if you're trying to play a game to beat it, I think one save state is enough anyway. Unless you're some kind of speedrunner who's perfecting his craft and needs multiple save states at different times and places, this ought to be good enough. Gunstar Heroes is also a pleasure to see working on the GGX7. Previous EverDrives for Game Gear did not support that. Sorry, my watch is going off because I hit my move gold for the day. But anyway, yeah, Gunstar Heroes used to not be compatible with previous versions of the EverDrive for Game Gear, and with the X7, that support is now fully realized. So This is quite a powerful EverDrive, and one that I can recommend, even though it's been sold out at a lot of the different places that carry it, like Stone Age Gamer. I was able to order it from Crix.com. However, just keep in mind that because it's shipping out from the Ukraine, it's going to take a long time to get here. So you're going to wait a couple of months easily. Could even be longer. But if you don't mind that, it's a quality device. Whether you get it from Stone Age Gamer or you get it from Crix, it's good.